In every age, there are teachings that slip quietly through the cracks of history. Not because they were unimportant, but because they were too powerful, too transformative, or too disruptive to be preserved unaltered. Some were hidden intentionally. Others were lost through time. But a few survived, fragmented, scattered, whispered through ancient libraries and esoteric traditions. Among these, none are more influential, more mysterious, or more misunderstood than the teachings attributed to a figure known only as Hermes Trismegistus. Today, we call these writings hermetic. But to the ancient world, they were something far more significant. They were believed to be the distilled wisdom of the gods themselves. A set of teachings that explained the nature of the universe, the structure of the soul, and the mechanics of reality. And though countless civilizations rose and fell, this wisdom passed between them like a secret flame, Egypt to Greece, Greece to Rome, Rome to the hidden schools of the Middle Ages, and eventually into the foundations of the Renaissance, alchemy, mystical Christianity, Kabbalah, and the birth of modern science. But what were these teachings? Why were they so revered? And what exactly was lost? To understand that, we must begin with the figure of Hermes himself. Not the Greek messenger god, though they share a name. Nor the Egyptian deity Thoth, though the two were eventually merged. Hermes Trismegistus is a symbolic figure, one part sage, one part priest, one part myth. Thrice great Hermes, the master of philosophy, the master of science, the master of spiritual knowledge. To the ancients, he wasn't merely a person. He was a bridge between worlds, the human and the divine, the visible and the invisible, the mind and the cosmos. The texts attributed to him, known today as the Hermetica, were not meant to be religious commandments. They were closer to a map. A blueprint of consciousness. A guide to understanding the hidden architecture behind existence itself. And central to this wisdom were ideas so profound that even now, thousands of years later, they continue to influence how we think about reality. One of the core hermetic ideas is that the universe is fundamentally mental. Not in the sense of imagination or fantasy, but in the sense that consciousness is the substrate of everything. The ancient Egyptians had a similar idea. So did early Greek philosophers, Indian mystics, and later, Renaissance alchemists. But the Hermetic text stated directly, the universe is mind. Creation begins not with matter, but with awareness. Not with physical forces, but with intention. To an ancient student, this meant something extraordinary. If reality emerges from consciousness, then understanding your own consciousness is the key to understanding reality itself. The outer world and the inner world are reflections of one another. This idea would evolve into what later Hermetists called the law of correspondence, as above, so below, as within, so without. It is perhaps the most famous Hermetic phrase, yet also the most misunderstood. Hermes did not mean that your thoughts magically changed the universe in an instant. Instead, he meant that the structure of reality is mirrored at every level, from the smallest to the largest, from the microcosm to the macrocosm, from the human soul to the divine mind. By studying one, you can understand the other. This idea wasn't meant to be abstract, it was meant to change how you live. To the Hermetic student, every emotion, every habit, every pattern of thought was part of a larger cosmic architecture. To change oneself was to participate consciously in the unfolding of the universe. But the Hermetic teachings go deeper. Much deeper. Another core principle is the idea of vibration. That everything moves, everything flows, everything is in a state of becoming. Even things that seem solid or still are simply vibrating at a frequency the human senses cannot detect. This may sound like modern physics, but the Hermetists had no need for particle accelerators. They arrived at this truth through contemplation of nature, through inner observation, and through the insight that consciousness and energy are inseparable. To them, vibration was the bridge between the spiritual and the material. Between thought and form. Between the divine and the human. If all things vibrate, then all things can be changed, because change is simply a shift in frequency. And if all things are connected, then every action, every intention, ripples outward into the whole. This would later be expressed as the law of cause and effect, not the simplified idea of karma as reward or punishment, but a deeper recognition that nothing happens in isolation. Every cause generates an effect, and every effect can become a cause. Reality is a chain of interwoven forces, and understanding this chain allows a person to step out of passive existence and into conscious participation. But perhaps the most profound of the Hermetic teachings is the idea of the human being as a dual creature, both mortal and divine. The Hermetica describes humanity as possessing a physical body subject to decay, but also a spark of the divine mind. To the ancient student, enlightenment didn't mean escaping the world. It meant remembering one's true nature. Reorienting one's awareness upward, toward the source of consciousness, rather than downward into the distractions of the material world. This process of remembering was known as gnosis, direct knowledge. Not belief, not faith, but inner realization. A moment when something ancient inside you recognizes itself. The Hermetists taught that the soul had forgotten its origin, fallen into identification with the body and the senses, and must awaken gradually through understanding, contemplation, and inner purification. This awakening wasn't a single event, but a process. One that unfolded across lifetimes, through the refinement of consciousness. One of the most striking passages in the Hermetica describes a moment of illumination, when the student suddenly sees the entire universe as alive, conscious, and interconnected. In this state, the separation between self and cosmos dissolves. Everything is one movement, one mind, one breath. And yet, individuality is not lost. Instead, it becomes a note within a vast symphony, distinct, but harmonious with the whole. This vision of unity influenced traditions across the world. Early Christian mystics, Sufi poets, Jewish Kabbalists, and Renaissance philosophers all drew from Hermetic thought. Even Isaac Newton, the father of modern physics, secretly studied Hermetic alchemy for decades. To him, the universe wasn't a machine. It was an expression of divine intelligence, governed by laws that reflected deeper metaphysical principles. But not all Hermetic teachings survived. Many were lost when the great library of Alexandria was destroyed. Others were hidden within alchemical symbolism, encoded in diagrams, or passed orally through mystery schools. Some scholars believe that entire volumes of the Hermetica vanished during the Christianization of the Roman Empire. Others think they were never written down at all. What remains are fragments. Dialogues between teacher and student, meditations on creation, reflections on the nature of the divine, and instructions for inner transformation. Yet even in fragmentary form, the teachings have a strange power. They feel ancient, but also modern. Mythic, but also deeply psychological. Scientific, yet mystical. They speak to something timeless inside the human mind. Perhaps this is why Hermes was called thrice great. Great in wisdom. Great in knowledge. Great in spiritual mastery. A figure who transcended culture, religion, and geography. A symbol of the universal human quest to understand who we are, why we are here, and what reality truly is. As we look deeper into these surviving teachings, another theme emerges, one that modern readers often overlook. The Hermetica emphasizes responsibility. Not moral responsibility in a religious sense, but existential responsibility. The understanding that consciousness is not passive. That every human being participates in shaping the destiny of their own soul. The texts describe the human mind not as a vessel waiting to be filled, but as a force capable of creation, distortion, or liberation. In one passage, Hermes warns that ignorance is not a lack of information. It is a state of sleep. A forgetting of one's origin, one's purpose, and one's power. But the remedy for this sleep is not external revelation, it is inner awakening. A slow and steady turning inward, toward the luminous core that the Hermetists believed resides within every person. This core, they said, is untouched by time, unaffected by circumstance, unclouded by the turbulence of the world. It is the part of you that recognizes truth when you hear it. The part that senses meaning before the mind can explain it. The part that remembers. To study Hermetic philosophy is not simply to learn ancient ideas. It is to engage in a practice of remembering. A reorientation of awareness from the surface of life to its depths. And as you begin to explore these depths, the world around you gradually shifts. Patterns become visible. Synchronicities unfold. The boundary between your inner world and the outer world begins to thin. And in this thinning, the teachings of Hermes reveal what they were always meant to reveal, that the universe is not a distant, indifferent place, but a living reflection of consciousness itself. As the Hermetic teachings unfold, another layer emerges, one that speaks not to philosophy or cosmology, but to the inner mechanics of transformation. Hermes taught that the universe is structured in levels, or planes, each reflecting the one above it and the one below it. These were not physical dimensions, but states of being. Conditions of consciousness. And the human soul, he said, moves through these planes in its journey toward understanding. This ascent is not guaranteed. It requires clarity, discipline, and above all, sincerity. The Hermetic texts describe a process of purification, not of the body, but of attention. For the Hermetists, attention was the most sacred of human faculties. Whatever you attend to grows stronger in your life. Whatever you neglect withers and fades. To control one's attention was to reclaim the power of creation within the mind. The texts even say that, a mind scattered upon many things cannot know the truth of even one. And so, the student was guided to gather the fragments of their awareness, to bring their mind into a single, steady flame. This flame was the beginning of insight. The point at which the soul begins to remember itself. And once the student reached this state, Hermes introduced a deeper teaching, that true knowledge is revealed only to those who are ready to receive it. Not because the knowledge is hidden, but because it cannot be perceived through an unprepared mind. A chaotic mind distorts truth. A fearful mind denies it. Only a mind that has become still, like a calm pool reflecting the sky, can receive the impressions of the higher realms. It was for this reason, the texts suggest, that the teachings were concealed within symbols. Not to keep them away from the unworthy, but to protect them from misunderstanding. Symbols are mirrors. They reveal according to the level of the viewer. A simple emblem in an alchemical manuscript may look like decoration to an untrained eye, yet to a prepared student it becomes a doorway into a deeper reality. And so the Hermetists preserved their wisdom not by locking it away, but by embedding it in images, metaphors, correspondences, and geometric patterns. Knowledge hidden in plain sight. One of the most intriguing of these symbols is the serpent. In Hermetic philosophy, the serpent is not a creature of deception but a representation of cyclic renewal, the eternal return, the shedding of the old self, the spiral motion of consciousness ascending through the planes. The famous image of the Ouroboros, the serpent devouring its own tail, is not a symbol of destruction but of completeness. The unity of beginning and end. The endless rhythm of becoming. This symbol appears repeatedly in Hermetic manuscripts for a reason, it reflects the very structure of existence. Another recurring theme is light. But the Hermetic concept of light is not physical illumination. It is awareness itself. Consciousness without form. The texts refer to this light as the nous, the divine mind from which all creation emerges. To the Hermetists, this nous is not separate from the human soul. It is the very essence of the soul. When you calm the mind, when you shift your attention inward, when you purify your perception, you begin to sense this inner light. At first, faintly. Then more clearly. Eventually, unmistakably. And this is where the Hermetic path diverges from many ancient traditions. For Hermes does not teach that enlightenment is something attained after death, nor something granted by external forces. Instead, he insists that the divine mind is already within you, waiting to be recognized. The spiritual journey, then, is not a climb toward heaven but a descent into the depths of one's own consciousness. A return to the point of origin. A remembrance of the light that has always been there. In one of the surviving Hermetic dialogues, the student asks how one can know whether they have truly awakened. Hermes answers simply, when the world appears as a shadow, and the inner light as the real. This does not mean rejecting the physical world, but seeing it in proper proportion. Understanding that form is temporary, while consciousness is eternal. That experiences change, while the one who experiences remains. This shift, the texts say, is the birth of wisdom. Yet Hermes also warns of a subtle danger on the path, the illusion of knowledge. He says that many who encounter fragments of truth believe they have grasped the whole. They cling to concepts, repeat doctrines, or mistake intellectual understanding for spiritual insight. But true knowledge is silent. It arises from direct experience, not from memorizing teachings. And so the Hermetic path requires humility, the willingness to remain a student, even when glimpses of truth have appeared. This humility opens the door to the final phase of Hermetic practice, integration. After illumination comes embodiment. The teachings were never meant to be abstract reflections. They were meant to reshape the way one lives. A Hermetic student was taught to anchor their inner understanding in daily life, through compassion, through clarity, through intention, and through conscious choice. The measure of wisdom was not mystical visions, but the quality of one's presence in the world. The ability to act without distortion. To perceive without fear. To choose without compulsion. And so the journey comes full circle. From the study of cosmic principles, to the transformation of the individual soul, to the realization that both are reflections of the same underlying reality. The Hermetic teachings, though fragmented, still carry the resonance of this unity. They remind us that wisdom is not far away. It is woven into the structure of existence. Written into the patterns of nature. Reflected in the architecture of the psyche. And encoded within the depths of consciousness, waiting patiently for the moment when we are ready to perceive it. And perhaps this is the greatest teaching Hermes ever offered. That the truths we seek are not hidden from us, but hidden within us. Waiting for silence. Waiting for sincerity. Waiting for the moment when the mind becomes still enough to remember what the soul has always known. For in remembering ourselves, we remember the universe. And in remembering the universe, we awaken to the divine mind. That has been guiding us all along.